Good day, everybody. Steve Prziborowski here. Welcome to episode 41 of Reach for the Firefighter Badge. Episode 41 is going to build upon the previous episode 40, Fire Department oral interviews, the most commonly asked oral interview questions. This is part 2. Episode 40 covered part 1. So here are some more commonly asked oral interview questions so you can be as prepared as you can be. Because again, there are no trick questions, just unprepared people. Because if you've prepared yourself, there should be no trick questions at all. You should be prepared to handle anything they throw at you. All right, as a reminder, my two websites, code3firetraining.com and chabotfire.com, have lots of great free information on there, lots of stuff to keep you busy for hours, if not days. Two of the books I've been fortunate to have published, both of which are on my website, The Future Firefighters Preparation Guide and Reach for the Firefighter Badge, are two good complimentary books to assist you be the best you can be. So let's continue on the most commonly asked oral interview questions. So one of the things, one of the questions I mentioned beforehand in the last episode was, what's your greatest strengths? And I also asked, what's your greatest weaknesses? Again, two common questions. This is sort of slightly different. This question, though, is what personality traits, which can be considered strengths, do you possess that you feel would make you a great firefighter? So maybe it's just a different way to ask what's your greatest strengths, but again, you should have 3 strengths of yours that you should be able to talk about. And don't just say I'm motivated or I'm dependable or I'm loyal. Everyone goes, well, what's the difference? Is it one better than the other? I know, they're all the same: motivated, loyal, dependable, hardworking, ethical, honest. What makes you stand out? Simply, this is what makes you stand out. Because think about it, if I ask 100 interview candidates, what's your greatest strength? I'm probably going to hear most of the same common standard clone answers: motivated, dependable, hardworking, blah, blah, blah. However, what makes you unique? What lets you stand out? Don't just tell me something. Back it up, support it with the facts. So I'm motivated because of this. And here's an example. And take it to the next level, not just back it up with a fact, but also now tie it into the position. So I'm motivated. Here's an example why. And here's why motivation is critical for a firefighter. Think about this. You should be able to back up anything that you say. That's the easy part. Regarding tying it into the position, you can tie any strength into a firefighter position: motivated, ethical, dependable, whatever it is. Think about it. Motivated. Is it critical that a firefighter is motivated or hardworking or ethical or blah, 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 whatever the trait is? Yeah, it's critical, because who's relying on you to be motivated? Your crew, your shift, your company, your department, the public you're fortunate to serve, the taxpayers, everyone. So if you do this right and you know yourself inside and out, you should be able to help that 70% score get higher and higher, because 70s don't get you hired typically. Usually it's 80s or higher. No one ever usually gets 100% on an interview, but you can definitely strive for the 90s and the high 80s. So that's how people get those high scores, is they're unique. There's something, they make the oral board remember something about them that's unique, that's different in a positive way. So think about those things that you have that you can offer. You know, you may get asked the question of why you over everybody else. Where a lot of candidates let their guard down is they usually start slamming other candidates. Well, you know, I'm better than everybody else because of these reasons. Well, don't come across cocky or arrogant. Come across confident, but not cocky or arrogant. But instead, a good answer is, well, I honestly can't speak for all the other candidates because I only know myself inside and out. I don't know everybody else that way. However, this is what I do have that I think is going to set me apart from the other candidates. So you try to turn a negative into a positive versus, well, I'm this, so that means I'm better than everybody else. So why you over everybody else? And you may be struggling with going, why me? Maybe it's because you're bilingual. I don't know. Maybe it's because of your previous work experience. Maybe it's because of your volunteer experience. Maybe because it's because of some unique skill that you have. We all have unique skills. We're all subject matter experts in something. You've got to know what that is for you and be able to expand upon it. And I know a lot of people say, well, I'm not good about bragging about myself. Well, you know what? It's not bragging, but if you want the job, you better be able to sell that oral board, that fire chief, why you're the best of the best, in a sincere, condescending way to anybody else. Another question you may get asked: what's the typical daily routine at a firehouse? And again, if you say fight fire, save lives, all that says to the panel is you didn't do your homework, you didn't do your research, you didn't even look at, you didn't do your homework. It's as simple as that. You're not required to do fire station visits. You're not required to do research, but you're stupid if you don't. Sorry for my bluntness, because that's how you really learn whether it's for you or not. Most fire departments, most firefighters around the country have the same typical work routine. Usually you start shift at whatever, 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, but here's something to think of. Don't assume every firefighter across the country starts work at 8 a.m. Some departments start work at 6:30 a.m., some at 7 a.m., some at 6 a.m., some at night, some at noontime. So if you go into, like, let's say, last I heard there was some departments in Texas, their 24-hour shift was not 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. the next morning. Their 24-hour shift was noontime to the next day at noon. And people go, that's a BS schedule. No, it's not. It seems to work for them. That's what they've had forever. Doesn't mean it's right, but it seems to work for them. I got guys that love that schedule. I'm like, how do you like a noontime to noontime schedule? You wreck sort of 2 days. They're like, hey, that's okay. I can wake up in the morning when I'm off, take my kids to school, go to work at noontime, get off the next day at noontime. I still got half the day. I mean, there is no perfect schedule. Trust me. A schedule, working as a firefighter is better than no schedule at all. So here's the thing. If you go to that department in Texas and you're assuming they start at 8 o'clock, but you say, oh yeah, they start at 8 o'clock when in fact it's 12 o'clock. What does that tell the panel? It tells them you didn't do your homework. You didn't visit firehouses. And I know that stuff we can teach people. So someone would argue, well, it doesn't really matter. I mean, what's the big deal? We'll train them that way. We'll teach them. But again, you got to show some love for the department. Because again, those oral board members, they obviously did what they had to do to get the job, to be a part of the department. They're usually the passionate ones about their department. So you know what? If you're not showing that department some love, especially showing them love, meaning that you took the time to learn more about them, then you know what? They may check out on you. So find out, talk to the firefighters. Don't regurgitate the information on the website. Don't regurgitate the information that was maybe printed in the job flyer. Talk to the firefighters. And then of course it sounds better. And again, you may not get asked, did you visit firehouses? But here's a way to squeeze that in. Well, what is the typical daily routine at the firehouse, Steve? Well, you know what? After talking to a number of firefighters around the department, this is what it seems to be, at least from the common answers I've gotten. Typically you start at 8 o'clock in the morning. Usually at that point, you check your gear out once it's on the rig, check out your writing assignment, the apparatus, your equipment, and then usually about 9 o'clock, migrate into the kitchen, have some breakfast, discuss the daily plan. Maybe at 10 o'clock, we do our morning workout. 11 o'clock, we go to the store to go shopping. Obviously, calls can come in at any time of the day. Usually we have lunch from 12 to 1. In the afternoon, we'll do some type of training or maybe inspections. And then usually we'll wrap up the day at about, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock with a group dinner like we did at lunchtime. And then usually after hours is my time to study and just do what I have to do to be the best I can be. And then of course, 8 o'clock in the morning, we get off shift. Again, you don't want to just regurgitate answers that you may have read on the website, but paraphrase it, because that shows, again, some uniqueness. Another question, what is the most essential duty a firefighter performs? Just like the previous question I asked of what's the most important service we provide, here's a different question. You know what? There is no wrong, there is no right on duty. But the key is show that you've done some homework and research, more than just visiting a website, which may or may not be accurate. But, talk to the firefighters. Again, there's many essential duties and there's no wrong or right one. It's how you justify it. That's key, justification for any of these. You may see a question of where do you see the fire service going in the future? Again, have you paid attention to researching your future career choice? You better. If this is something you want to do for the next 20, 30, 40 years, you better know what you're getting into, because it's going to change. It has to change. Imagine law enforcement. Imagine you wanting to become a police officer. Let's say right now it's 2020. Let's say maybe this was 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and you were testing to become a law enforcement professional, and you were asked a question of, where do you see the police or law enforcement field going? Imagine if you had your crystal ball to come back to June 2020 when George Floyd was murdered by the Minneapolis police officer. Who would have expected that? And who would have, no one would have foreseen that. I know there's people that go, no, that was about to happen. I'm not trying to get into political debate in any capacity, but look at how that's changed police. Look at all the police reform initiatives that are around the country right now. Look at the movements for defunding police. You know what? People are demanding change. People are demanding an end to the brutality, and I can't blame them. And that's the challenging part. So again, the people are speaking, and if you're a police officer right now, or a police chief, or a city council, city manager, mayor, you're going to have to make some positive change to better serve your community, because the citizens are not going to tolerate it. I can't blame them. You know, we need people to be, especially law enforcement professionals, to be respectful and just to do the right thing. And the point is, careers, industries can and do change. Just like, I'm trying to think, in the course of being in the fire department, there's a lot of things, even in my almost 28 years being a firefighter, that I never would have expected when I got hired that we'd be doing today. So this is the thing, you've got to keep an open mind. You can't get stuck on tradition, because things are going to change. Things have to change. You know, think about you being a police chief right now, and your boss, the city council, to say, by the way, chief, we're cutting 25% of your budget, and you better come up with a plan to reform your police department or defund it or whatever that means. The police chief cannot say to the city council or the mayor, so sorry, no, I'm not going to accept that, because guess what happens at that point? The police chief is fired, and we'll bring somebody else into your position that'll want to do your job. You know, you're getting the direction, because we all have bosses. Things can and sometimes have to change, and we have to be willing to navigate the change to make sure that we're still relevant. Because if we're not relevant, why are we here? If we're not providing the best possible service we can to the community in a respectful, passionate way, why have a fire department, or even why have a police department? You know, I can see that in some people's eyes of why they're saying, we don't need a police department, look how violent and brutal they are. Okay, I get it. But again, fire service wise, be prepared to look in the future. I mean, I know people, there'll be robots that'll go in to fight fire. I don't know what the future entails, but do your homework. And there's lots of great information out there on the internet, social media, the fire magazines like Fire Engineering, Firehouse, as well as other things that you can maybe see in the future. But if you go into the interview saying, well, where do I see the fire service going in the future? And you go, I think paramedics on every fire engine. Well, many communities are already doing that. And some could argue that we probably don't need more paramedics. I'm not saying this is true or not, but you could probably argue that we maybe need less paramedics. You know, most fire departments have either EMTs or paramedics on the fire apparatus. Well, are paramedics beneficial? I'd like to think so. I'm a paramedic. I went to school to become one, but there's probably some that could argue that more lives are being saved by good basic life support, which is an EMT skill. Again, I'm not here to argue either fact, but you can't go in the interview saying, well, I think more paramedics because we're running more medical calls. Well, throwing money at a problem is not the right answer. Throwing money at a problem is not the reasonable answer, because maybe there's not more money to be had. City budgets are not getting high. I mean, they're not getting increased, they're decreasing. So you can't do more with less, but you can do different with less. So I think you need to look in the future, and there's a lot of ways you can do that, I think. So we could talk a lot more on this issue, but again, be able to think where the fire service is going, but it's not just growth, because adding fire stations, adding personnel, while it's what I'd love to do, realistically, the finances are not there in most communities to allow that. So you actually may see less firefighters, less firehouses. So how do you make that happen? Some fire departments have chosen not to run medical calls anymore because they're so short-staffed. Look at law enforcement professionals, police officers. They're not going to be maybe running all the calls they used to in the future. I don't know how it's going to look. So again, you have to be able to look in a crystal ball and have a good conversation. You know, a question you may get asked, are you currently on any other fire department eligibility lists? You know, and again, hopefully you have an answer, and there's nothing wrong with that. Pretty much most firefighters realize that if you want to be a firefighter bad enough, you're going to take multiple tests. Yeah, this may be your dream department, but in all reality, we're also realize that, yeah, maybe we're your dream, but you know what? You'd be stupid to turn down a job at another department. I mean, a job is a job, a career is a career. You're still called firefighter, whether you had a big city fire department, a small fire department, rural, suburban, or urban, or whatever. Another question, what would you do if you witnessed someone being sexually harassed or something illegal or unethical in general? Put yourself, because of the time of this, as I'm doing this right now, is the end of June 2020, look at the police officers in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Obviously you have 4 officers that are basically right now arrested to be held accountable for the murder of George Floyd. Watch how that plays out, because it's very easy for some to say, and I wasn't there, so I can't, it's easy for me to Monday morning quarterback, and that's not my intent, but it doesn't matter about my opinion. Look at the court of public opinion. The court of public opinion is watching this video. You got a police officer with a knee on George. He's saying he can't breathe, and you got the 3 other police officers and obviously multiple others, but at least 3 in the immediate area that did nothing. They did nothing. And you look at how this is going to play out to the average person goes, well, if they really truly care about human lives, like they should, because a police officer, firefighter should care about human lives, they should have stopped the other police officer. I know it's very easy to say, yeah, easier said than done. Yeah, I'm going to tell my boss, because that was the boss of, one of them, I'm going to tell him, stop, stop, stop. Yeah, easier said than done unless you've been in that stressful situation, but does it make it right? And that's that challenge you got to think about is if you're in the fire service, no different from law enforcement, if you're in the fire service for 20, 30, 40 years, you are at some point going to witness something going on by another fire department member or the public, but especially another fire department member that is maybe sexually harassing somebody or maybe harassing them, discriminating against them, or just doing something illegal or unethical in general to them, maybe at the firehouse, maybe during the training academy. You're going to do that. I mean, that's just human nature, sad to say. What are you going to do about it? And you wonder, why do we ask those questions? Number one, because they happen. Think about it. They happen, and we need to find out we're hiring the best people that'll not just say something if they see something wrong, but do something about it. And it sucks to have that courage. No one wants to have having the courage to raise your hand and say, no, stop it, knock it off, end it. That takes courage, because now you're setting yourself up to be the outcast, the one that they're calling a snitch, the one that they're calling, oh my God, why'd you snitch on a brother or sister? No, it's not snitching, it's doing the right thing. Again, how would you want somebody else be treated, especially if they were your family member, your friend, your loved one, or just a general human being in general? That's the litmus test. So you're going to see more and more of these questions out there, especially based on things that are going on in the country, sad to say. So what are you going to do? And I know you may say, well, it's an interview, I'll answer it the way they want to hear it. No, answer it the way you think you should, the way you would try to do it in real life. But again, it's easier said than done, because it's one thing to say something in an oral board. It's another thing to do it in the heat of the battle when you got everybody watching you. But that's going to be your legacy. Sad to say, but that's the world we live in today, especially when everyone has cameras and they're filming all of us. And we better be doing the right thing for the right reasons. And if not, we're going to be held accountable for actions, as we should. And sort of to segue on the last question, you're going to get more than likely hypothetical questions related to drug use. And this is about other fire department members. So hypothetically, you're a probationary firefighter, you happen to see another firefighter taking what appears to be illegal drugs, or drinking alcohol, or cheating, stealing, maybe a conflict between 2 firefighters ready to fight each other, maybe discrimination, harassment, like I mentioned, maybe conflicting orders at the emergency scene. And people go, Chief, why do they ask those questions? Number one, because they happen, sad to say. As I mentioned in previous episodes, Google firefighter behavior. Google firefighter arrested, just like police officer arrested, police officer bad behavior. Unfortunately, firefighters do sometimes very similar things and find themselves getting fired, getting suspended, getting demoted, getting in trouble. We're human beings. And I know a lot of people say, well, how could that happen? We do background checks. We do all these other checks to try to find the best people. Right. But who do we hire? People. And everyone has some form of challenge in their background, some more than others, some less than others, and sometimes things will squeak by backgrounds or psychological evaluations. It's easier said than done. So we try to hire the best, and in public safety, but you know what? Things happen sometimes. But we're going to ask this question, number one, because it happens, but also number two, as I mentioned, to see how you're going to handle it. Are you going to stick your head in the sand, or are you going to actually do something? See something, say something, do something. That's the hardest part. That's what takes courage. So think about that. You're faced with that situation, you better have a good answer. Now, just using drugs, alcohol, cheating, the most common questions, do a Google search on firefighter drug use. There have been stories of firefighters dealing drugs out of firehouses. There's been stories of firefighters drinking alcohol literally on the job, or cheating, or stealing, or doing other illegal, unethical things. Google those stories, learn as much as you can, so when they ask you the question, you can have an answer from the heart, but you can also back it up with the fact. Hey, and why I think drugs in the firehouse are bad is because of this. There was just a story in city whatever that showed a firefighter dealing drugs out of the firehouse, you know, and if it's on the internet, I mean, it has to be true, right? No, I mean, just joking. Do your fact checking and everything else, but a lot of that stuff will be in the news because if Joe the plumber gets a DUI, no one cares. If Joe the firefighter gets a DUI or does anything illegal out of the firehouse, guess what? It's going to make the news, as it should, because taxpayers pay us to be there. A firehouse is a public facility. So we got to be transparent, and we're in the firing line. So you got to be able to realize we're going to be held to a higher standard. So you better be able to have good answers that come from the heart, not just, well, it can't be alcohol, it can't be drug use because firefighters are we only hire the most upstanding human beings. I've heard people say that. That's how a lot of candidates answer. And you're like, you're clueless. Pay attention to the internet and social media, and you'll see that this stuff's happening out there. Thankfully, it's a very small percentage of bad apples, but think about it. Every line of work has bad apples. Most of the people are all great people that do the right thing, come to work, make things better, earn their living, but there's bad apples in every line of work. But be prepared for these questions, and don't just be the one that says, well, drugs are illegal, we can't do them, they're against the policy, they need to be fired. Hey, not as easy as that. You've got to be able to have a thought process here of how you answer these hypothetical questions. So do your homework and be able to maybe cite real life cases to show that you're paying attention. Another question you may get asked, what does a firefighter actually do? And that sort of ties into the other questions I mentioned. If you've talked to a firefighter and you've visited firehouses, not just read the job description, not just read the internet website, you'll get a better idea what a firefighter does. Most firefighters in most departments do the same things, but again, personalize it to that department. And then the last question that you usually get is what's called the closing statement. You have the opening statement, the softball at the beginning that usually says, hey, tell us about yourself, or tell us how you prepared. Usually the last question is, hey, that concludes all the questions. Is there anything you'd like to add or feel that you left out? And I'll talk more about closing statements because I think it's worth an episode of itself, just like the opening statement. But don't be the candidate that says, nope, I'm good to go. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Later. Don't leave valuable points on the table. That's your 30 to 60 to maybe 90 seconds at the end to close the deal. You got to be a salesperson. Well, I'm not good at selling myself. You know what? Learn. So my website, Code 3 Fire Training, ChabotFire.com, the one website. If you go to the free stuff link, there's a link on opening statements and closing statements that I encourage you to check out. You're not me, I'm not you, but find something that works for you. And again, we'll talk more about closing statements. So in closing, as always, take the time to prepare for and rehearse the most commonly asked oral interview questions between episode 41, this one 41 and the previous one. Those are the most common oral board questions. I mean, there may be other ones, but again, if you know yourself inside and out, if you've researched the department inside and out, the community inside and out, and you come in with passion and enthusiasm, there should be no trick questions. They just may be worded slightly different. So in the next episode, we're going to discuss numerous tips for success during your next oral interview. So as always, thank you very much for the gift of your time. Until the next episode, be safe, take care, and we'll talk soon.